All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our February meeting. It's always great to see our school-based folks who are just part of this much larger family. The time is currently 6:05 p.m. And we are going to go ahead and get our meeting started, and Chair Hertz will be joining us momentarily. So at this time, I would like to call our meeting to order. And you should have each received a copy of today's agenda. And the first item on our agenda this afternoon is the approval of the minutes from the January 26th meeting. I'd like to give you just about a minute or so to review that once more and to identify if there are any corrections that are needed to the minutes. I know that there are at least 2 schools who were in attendance on the 26th, and that information was missed in the minutes. So we will be making that correction and adding Pine Island and Tree Line as you were present at last month's meeting. So please take a minute to take one last look at the minutes from last month's meeting.
This meeting is being recorded.
Are there any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, can I have someone make a motion to approve our minutes, please?
So moved.
So moved
Second.
by Mr. Miller, and can I have a second?
Second, Gabe Denny.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Seeing none, minutes are approved. And at this time, I would like to open the floor to Board Member Patrica for any board member comments that she has.
Thank you, Dr. Cupid McCoy. Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? Yes, good, no, bad.
Awesome.
Lots of thumbs up. I like that. Thank you all for being here. If you have served on DAC before, what I'm going to tell you about my background is going to be repetitive. So I apologize for that, but I want the new people to know kind of how I got started in the school district. I was a PTO mom at Pinewoods Elementary School, and then the district made a decision, and it wasn't the district's decision, it was required by the state for some grade adjustments to take place. My youngest son was in 2nd grade at the time. I had some concerns about that because I wanted to know whether he was really proficient, and I didn't want scaling to be taking place to sort of mask whether he was really doing well or if he was just doing well based on the test score that was given to him. So I went to my principal and she said, you know what, you should go to a DAC meeting and you should ask that question. So I went to a DAC meeting and I absolutely fell in love with the school district of Lee County and the staff at the district. And I essentially went from being PTO to being the SAC representative. And then I was on executive DAC for the district advisory council. And shortly thereafter, I ran for school board. So I'd like to plant that idea to all of you. School board members are not born politicians. We can be concerned parents who either identify an issue that we want to tackle, or we just love what we see and we want to support that. And that's pretty much why I'm on the school board, is because I got involved with this group that I love so much. There are two issues or two items I'd like to update you on tonight. The first is proximity, which we discussed in our last meeting. I'd like you to know that that is underway. Communications have gone out in the form of video and emails and text messages. We've done our best to reach parents of elementary age children through those mass communications, and parents who have not responded up to this point are being contacted by their building principal so that the form in focus can be completed and filled out. If there's anyone on this meeting that has a question about your child's specific situation, there is an email address that you can send your questions to that email address, and you'll either receive a response via email or someone from staff will call you. Dr. Cupid McCoy, if you could help me to remember what that email address is and perhaps put it in the chat for our DAC members, I would be forever grateful. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot there. I did look it up before the meeting, but I've lost it and I didn't memorize it. So if you can do that by the end of the meeting, I'd be forever grateful. Thank you. So that's the first update, the first issue I wanted to update you on. And the second issue is a Hurricane Ian update. Anyone remember Hurricane Ian?
Oh, yeah.
I asked that question kind of tongue in cheek because for some of us, Hurricane Ian is a bit of a distant memory because we weren't all that impacted by it for a long period of time. But for others in the district, it is still very much an everyday struggle. And it is an everyday, I don't want to call it a struggle for the school district, but it is something that's very much on our minds and very much a part of our operations on a daily basis as well. At the beginning of every action meeting, the superintendent, Dr. Bernier, provides an update, a Hurricane Ian update, so that the board knows and the public will know where we stand in terms of our progress with fixing the things that were broken by Hurricane Ian. And I beg your patience, and I thank you for your patience up to this point. If you're in a building that doesn't have carpeting, for example, or if you're in a building that doesn't have taped and painted drywall, or if you're in a building that's missing ceiling tiles, or you're in a building that, you know, has a tarp on the roof, all of those things will take time. Your buildings and the buildings that your children are in are safe. You all remember way back at the beginning when we reopened schools, we had a 9-point checklist to determine whether the schools were safe for reopening. Safe for reopening and pretty for reopening are two very different things. The safe part is done in almost all of our schools, and the pretty part is what we're working on right now. 64% of those projects have been completed as of last night's board meeting. And our maintenance staff is working diligently to increase that percentage every single day. Some projects take longer. Roofs take a heck of a lot longer than paint does, for example. So if you go to your child's school and you're still seeing damage from even though you aren't necessarily impacted by it, understand that we are working very, very hard to get our schools back to where they were before. That being said, there were 3 schools, well, more than 3 schools, but 3 schools that are sort of separated from everybody else in terms of the impact of the hurricane on them. The Sanibel School, as I'm sure you all know, was impacted very, very badly by the storm. They are back in their building. So
Good.
that's a huge celebration. It is wonderful and amazing that we were able to get those students and that staff back into their building. So that's a huge win. The next school is Hector Cafferata Elementary School out in the Cape. Hector Cafferata is a total loss. What happened to that building is essentially the roof came off and it was soaked from the top down. A lot of our buildings had water intrusion from the bottom. So you maybe had 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 feet of water that went up the building. Hector Cafferata, on the other hand, was soaked from the top down. It's a total loss. Those students and staff are in portables right now. They're in a portable campus. And we were recently presented by staff, the board was recently presented with options for Hector Cafferata. And I think the option that seemed most palatable to most board members was to move the location of Hector Cafferata and make it a K-8 school, which is, we already had a middle school in our capital plan. So from a dollars and cents perspective, it really makes a lot of sense to turn that into a K-8 and use FEMA money to help us with the difference between the cost of a middle school and a K-8 school. So that seems to be the direction we're headed there. No final decisions have been made by the board. And the superintendent and his staff will be holding a town hall meeting with that community to let them know where we stand at this point. And then the final school that was, and when I say final, I don't mean last in my thoughts, because every day I wake up and every conversation that I have with the superintendent starts with Fort Myers Beach Elementary School. They are very much in the forefront of my thoughts, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues on the board, but based on yesterday's conversations, I know they're very concerned about it as well. So we haven't made a final decision on Fort Myers Beach Elementary and the future there. We had a nice, I would say pretty deep discussion about what the options are at Fort Myers Beach. The superintendent and his staff are going to go and do some work and bring back some options to the board. And I would think a decision would be made on that sometime in the month of March. So hopefully at our next meeting, I'll be able to update you on Fort Myers Beach. I feel like I've talked too long. Does anybody have any questions for me? Seeing and hearing none, I will turn it back over to you, Dr. Cupid McCoy. Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
You mentioned Hector can you say that again for me?
Hector Cafferata Elementary, yes.
There you go. You had said that they're in portables now. Where are these portables located?
The portables, Dr. Cupid McCoy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're on the campus of Cape Coral Technical College. They are on the campus of Cape Coral Tech.
Oh, okay, great.
So it's essentially kind of like very close to where Hector Cafferata was located, almost across the street, I think.
Gotcha. I'm just out of curiosity, like how many portables would that require to get to put everyone back together? Are we thinking maybe 20, 30, 40, 50, I don't know, portables to
50 is way too high.
Right.
I knew
whole
that,
school?
yeah, I knew that answer when I approved the expenditure, but my memory is failing me right now. I can't tell you exactly how many, but I will tell you what I know about portable campuses is that it's classrooms in some of the portables, and it's a cafeteria in another portable, and it's administrative office space in another portable, and each portable classroom has its own bathroom. They are very conducive to learning. I did a lot of volunteering in a portable at Pinewoods Elementary. It's not a bad environment at all for kids, especially in a short time frame like this, where it was so important for us to get those students and staff back together in the same building so their school community could be together.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Dr. Cupid McCoy, take it away.
Thank you, ma'am. Member Patrica, I have that information from Mr. Malloy. I will put that in the chat in a little bit, but I'd like to turn the meeting over to Chair Hertz, who's joined us. Thank you. Chair Hertz.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to have next a presentation on the code of conduct. Everybody should have received, ideally, an email back on February 10th, which gave you some questions. I was just going to preview those real quick so everybody can be thinking about that before our presenters go through the issues in the code of conduct. And what has been requested of our group from our board is that the board wants to reduce the amount of information that's included in the student code of conduct. So hopefully people have perhaps had an opportunity to look at that and can share information they have on items they think could be taken out or ways to reduce the size. I know I took a look at it, and the 6th to 12th grade one is only 108 pages. Slight sarcasm. The other questions were, and this was asked of us previously, should the code be reduced to just one code for the whole school district, or should it stay split into more than one code as it is now, kind of split between elementary and secondary? And that was a question our group was asked before. I will share with you folks that weren't here the last time our group was asked that. The opinion of DAC was that it should be split into 2 guides, but that doesn't mean that people's opinions haven't changed. And then in the breakout sessions, we will go through a little bit more detail of what are the things that people believe absolutely must be in the code, what are things that could be eliminated or sections, and are there different formattings or ideas or other information to include in the code, and is there anything that's not in the code that you think should be in there? So really, this is an opportunity to sort of comment on all aspects of it with any ideas you may have about removing or adding things. And with that said, I would turn it over to our presenters, which I believe we have Jessica Duncan and Tammy Scott here.
Good evening. So we are going to take just a couple of minutes to review what we'll be talking about with the code before we break out into levels. And some of the things were just discussed. So when we've come for the last couple of years, because it's been very important to us to have a lot of input from different groups and to have this be a more collaborative process. And the input last year from the group was very valuable. We did move from 3 levels to 5 levels. We did talk about the 2 guides. We got some information from the Department of Education. State statute does require 2 guides, although there are a number of districts across Florida that only have 1. But they did suggest that we could put 2 guides into 1 booklet. So we would still have to have an elementary section and a secondary section, but that would be something for us to consider tonight. So as we get started here, when we talk about the code, it's very expansive. So we have 12 booklets in all. Some are paper and some are electronic. When we have an elementary and secondary code, we have to have each in English, Spanish, and Creole. So we have 6 paper books and we have 6 electronic to make sure we're ADA compliant. And we have to go through an approval process for those. And each year we make sure that we have new pictures that look and represent our district. We also make sure that we have all of the edits, and we do what's called a red line. So whatever changes we make and whatever changes we ultimately bring to the board are indicated in the book so that it's clear to anybody who's participating or part of these meetings what changes were made and what impact your input had. So talking also about last year, besides the levels, one thing we talked about at length was hair color and the impact of that. So that was one thing that was a significant change for students. And I know that they were excited about in the code. And we also did talk about looking at the code each year. So there's no requirement for us if there aren't significant changes to look at it each year. But overall, the feedback we've gotten is that people do want to take a look and give input. So we do appreciate that. This year, we've started working with our company who helps us put all of this together. And They have created, and when we're able to pull that slide up, they've created a new landing page for us. So if you are a parent or a public member who wants to come and look at the code, we have had feedback that some of it's challenging for some people to get in and find out exactly where it is and how to access it. So they've attempted to make that easier. And I'm not sure that we can access that right now, but when we can get into that, we will.
Can you see because I'm seeing a totally different view. Can you see the video that I tried to pull up?
I can see the landing page and the current page, but not in a video format.
Okay. We'll fix that. How about now?
I can see a video now.
All right. So within what they're talking about as far as a proposed landing page, just taking the code of conduct, separating out the sections and placing it kind of like a more comprehensive way of just selecting the exact components in which you want to view, rather than having to scroll through an entire booklet on your phone or, on the computer. So you could hone in right to the area in which you want to look at. So this is their example of an opportunity that it could, the way that it would look. Okay.
So one of the things mentioned tonight that, again, we're going to dive into a little deeper when we get into our groups is the reduction of pages of the code. So if you are a parent and you're trying to access information, it may feel overwhelming if you're trying to go through and you have this booklet that's 108 pages. So there are some things potentially that could be removed. There are some things as you go through that are required by statute. We do have the statute here listed, and that outlines the things that we have to keep in here. So we have to keep our discrimination statement. We have to keep some parts of the glossary, some other areas. In addition, as much as we're tasked to reduce pages, there are two more things we are required to add. So we have to add the board policy 1.28, which is our ethics and education policy. And we also have to add a FERPA notice, which outlines our requirements to keep student information private. We have had a request from two groups to add a link to the Civil Rights and Equity Guide. That started some of the discussion on our other groups as to whether that really is part of the code of conduct, and if there's other places that people can access that doesn't need to be in this section. So currently that's located in our parent portal, our employee portal, and our administrative portal. So there's different ways that each group can get to that. We also would provide a paper copy of anything that anybody asked if they came to the office here because they weren't able to access it electronically. So one of the suggestions, and that we've had some discussion about, was to move some of the information to a QR code. So that doesn't completely remove the information, it makes it available, but it's not so cumbersome in when you're going through it. So if you come to a section and you want additional information on it, you can use the QR code. So as we were talking through some other groups, pros and cons. So if you're using a paper copy of the code, it's great to have the QR code because you're not able to use a link. However, if you're looking at this electronically, or you're looking at this like many people would, which would be on their phone, which is a lot of us will just use what's available to us, our phone, a QR code is not the best way. So there was a suggestion to actually look at both, looking at maybe a QR code in the printed copy and a link in the electronic copy. The QR code would also take you directly to anchor points, meaning whatever information you're most interested in, it would take you directly there. if we do this, it would be a lot of work on the front end, but ultimately down the road, it would be less work editing and updating in years to come. So we'd have to put a lot of time in on the front, but then there would be not as much time that we would have to spend each year on revisions.
So our next steps really are the most exciting steps, because that's when we get to talk to all of our stakeholders, and stakeholders like yourselves, but also our students and our administrators and lots of different groups that we like to talk to gain feedback from. So from now until mid-April, that's really what our task is going to be revolving around, is really gathering all of the suggestions from everyone. So we're excited about that part. We hope to be able to mid-April go to the board with our first presentation in regards to the opportunities that we saw from our gathering of information from all of our groups, and then really bringing the code forward in May for review and final approval. There's a lot that happens in the summertime to prepare the books and all of those other pieces to ensure that we are ready for the new school year. So yep, go ahead.
So as we move forward, some of the questions that we're going to be asking you to think through on your teams are, what are the must-haves that need to be kept in the code? And as we go through, there are some parts, like we talked about, that are required. So if we're talking about those parts, we'll let you know that we have to have a dress code policy. We have to have information about attendance. We have to have things about orderly learning environment, pieces of the glossary, discrimination. So those pieces are going to have to stay in there. But are there some components or sections that can be eliminated, or maybe that the information can be found in another forum or platform?
So really at this time, I hope you guys can hear me. At this time, we are going to move to our breakout sessions. In the agenda that Christine sent to everyone, you received a link to the Jamboards. We got a lot of great responses last year when we utilized the Jamboard. And that's when you are able to put a sticky note on, but we have facilitators for each group. If you have questions on how to do it, they can show you how to do it. But at this time, we're going to move to the Jamboards as well. Christine, I want to make sure that I'm correct in this, that we're going to exit out of this Zoom and go into our Zoom link for our level group.
Yes, that is correct. There's elementary, middle, and high school. Unfortunately, I have been having issues. I think it has to do with the Zoom update. So Dr. Johnston, I'm going to call on you. I sent you the links. If you could please put those into the chat. And I have a screen share that I can put up that has the codes.
Yes, will do.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jessica is going to be working with our stakeholders at the high school level. I'm going to work with middle school, and then Kim Mullum is one of our coordinators of Sandy Hook. We didn't even introduce ourselves, Jessica. I think we probably should. Kim is going to work with our elementary group. She's the coordinator of Sandy Hook, as well as Amanda Weinrich. She's one of our ESE coordinators. So we welcome that assistance. Joining me at the middle school level is, oh no, I'm sorry. Amanda's with me at the middle school level. Danielle is at the elementary level. And then joining Jessica is Amy Bartlett in ESE and Wally Cologne. And we also have Paul Milford, our coordinator of social work services. So lots of support in student services and ESE to help guide us this evening. All right. So we'll see you in the breakout rooms.
Is there anything else you guys would like to add to question 2, or can we move on to 3?
So yeah, there's 3 post-its there, and your model student behaviors could be condensed somehow. I'm not sure it's necessary to have all the different levels of model behavior. I know they mentioned the civil rights and equity. I don't know if that's necessarily important to put in the code of conduct. I haven't read the policy to know if there's any code of conduct based behind it, but I know it is located in multiple other spots throughout the county's website and such like that, throughout the district's website. So I don't think, some people were talking about that being added. I don't think that would be necessarily one of those things we need to add. Personal opinion. I guess there's nothing else there. We can move on to question 3, which would be what format would be valuable to stakeholders to access the code? QR codes, links, table of contents linked. So definitely want to take some input on that, because that's very important for us as the parents and stakeholders to be able to get to the information we need right away, and not have to dive through 108 pages to find the 1 or 2 sentences I'd be looking for. So definitely want to take some input and ideas on that. Me personally, I think having a linked table of contents is very easy and good to use. Kind of get you to the subject you're looking for, and then you have the ability to read through everything in that subject or scan for what you're looking for.
And Ken, I do agree with you on that. We have a lot of documents within the district that we utilize, and we've gone to linked table of contents, and it is a great feature. Like you said, versus thumbing through everything, it just takes you exactly where you need to go. So I do agree with that.
Yeah, and I work in the tech field, so whenever I get content and I'm looking something up, it cuts about a half an hour out of my day to be able to look up what I need to find. So I think that's a super easy way to do things.
Yeah.
QR codes, a lot of people are using them on their phones, but I know they said sometimes it's hard to view on the phone. Has anybody tried to view the table or the code of conduct on their phone and run into that?
Well, since you're a tech guy, we were talking about it today. We were saying if we had just QR codes and a lot of people access it on their phone, how do they QR code on their phone if they're using their phone? Does that make sense?
If they have the QR code, yeah, if it's like, yeah, they'd have to have a piece of paper.
Right.
And it's from their monitor, which means they're already on the site in most cases. So
Right.
I don't know if that's a good, logistically and financially, if that helps. The only thing I could say is if you're sending out a 1 sheet from the schools,
Sure.
that might be a great idea to put the QR code on that 1 sheet. That it'll take them to the exact code book that they're looking for, the one of 12 books, and they can scan the correct code.
Mm-hmm. I feel like you were in our meeting today because this is exactly what we were talking about.
I promise I wasn't there. Somebody else mentioned table of contents. If there's nothing else, we can move on. And guys, we can always go back. So definitely put it in chat, or speak up if you want to go back to one of the questions and review something. So the next question would be: should the code be reduced to 1 book rather than 2? Now, I believe they said we can't reduce it to 1 book, but we could have 1 book with 2 sections.
Correct.
So kind of the thoughts and opinions on that. And I'll be glad to share my thought. I think if we're going to go to a linked table of contents, I think 1 book with 2 sections is definitely easy, because you're going to have that linked table of contents, so you can go to exactly where you want to go. But if that's something that the district is not going to do, I think 2 books would be separate, so that we don't have to now pan through 216 pages
Right.
comparatively to find what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So we have somebody comment 1 book, 2 sections. I think it should stay as 2 books. I'm going to make that a little bigger so I can see it. Stay as 2 books. I think it's a lot of information as is right now. Definitely agreed with that. We got in the chat, I like 1 book with 2 sections would be better as well. It's like somebody else put a post-it up there but didn't type anything. So is that yours, Phil? Okay.
And feel free to play around. You're not going to mess it up. It's kind of fun to make the sticky notes.
Yeah, I've been doing this for a few years, and the Jamboard has made this so much easier, and we can put everything on the sticky notes, and when we read back into the full group, it makes it very easy to read and highlight and see what we're doing there. So definitely move them around, change the colors, whatever makes you feel like you're doing it the right way. But you can't mess it up. So we'll move on to the next one, so we definitely can cover all of the questions there. So we got some comments here. Are there any other pieces within the code you wish to address? We talked about the door-to-door or off-campus things, but are there other things in the code that should be addressed? You know, to our students, to our parents, even to our staff, our teachers, because this is it's the whole entire district, not just for the kids.
I have a question. I feel kind of silly asking it. Somewhere in this book of many, many pages, and maybe you'll know this offhand. I hope there's a section that kind of addresses student behavior or student expectations on field trips.
I think it does mention like off campus and on campus if it's a school function.
Right, so
it would be a field trip would be considered as like an off campus but school function event.
okay, that would be great. We want to keep that in there then. That's a must-have.
So I guess one thing that I look at, and I'm curious about, is the model student behavior for level 2, 3, 4, 5. Kind of makes me touch on what's the difference between those 5 levels for model student behaviors.
I agree with that, and I think it could possibly be eliminated.
Oh, I think I know. There's a video that was on our invite for this meeting. I clicked on it, and I believe they were all started with the letter R, like respect, reliable,
Respond, yeah, there are 5 Rs.
responsible, all those 5 Rs. So maybe those are the 5 student models of behavior that they're looking at or that you're looking for.
Well, it does.
I don't know what 5 of them offhand.
It goes up. Like, yeah, it's 5 different levels. It's responsibilities for level 1, and responsibilities for level 2, responsibilities for level 3, and they all kind of still touch on the R's. Actually, as you get higher, it takes one of the R's off. Level 3 drops 1 R. Level 4 is down to 3 R's, and level 5 is 3 R's. So it's, I don't know if that's kind of confusing for anybody else. And, you know, what's the difference between them? Why do we have 5 levels? And should we just have 1 model student instead of 5 levels of model students?
Or one level with 5 R's in it. Yeah. Because you just want 1 level. You want somebody that will do all 5 R's. Because why would you give them an option? Do I want to be a 2R or 3R or 4R? I don't know that we want to give them a range of what level they want to go to, but this is what we're looking for. Level 1 or standard model is these 5 R's.
I think within the PBIS system in everybody's school, the model student is kind of explained. It's I mean, I know there's a general how we want our students to behave and act and engage at school, but I believe that each school through their own PBIS system has that in place of the expectations of their student.
That's correct too. And I will say, I do like that we went to the 5 levels instead of 3 when it came down to the behaviors. Because I know under the 3 levels, like something like cheating on a test was the same as murder. So I think, using that example, I know murder was homicide was a level 5 now, but being a level 3 where they're equal to vandalism, it kind of just didn't make sense that you'd have the same level. So keeping things in place, I definitely think that the 5 levels of behaviors,
That's good.
very, very good thing to do.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Kind of like infractions, right? Depending on what their infractions are, where they land. Is what
Yeah,
the
like a level
consequence would
5
be.
are like the most serious behaviors. I will say that I noticed in there, maybe something needs to be redlined, is under level 5. With all of the infractions, it does say level 4 in bold letters. So that maybe something needs to be redlined and switched to actually say level 5.
Okay, I get you. Ay, right?
Is there anyone from student services that could explain that a little bit about the 5 levels of the model student behavior? If
I
not, it's
would-
okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I would
who has a
not want
question?
to, yeah, I would not want to explain it incorrectly. I wish we had Chuck on our room.
That's okay. We'll get back with that question for a clear answer. And then I see Julie Martinez has her hand up.
Yeah, so, hello. I think something needs to be included with, involvement of like cell phones, social media, taking videos, harassing classmates, on, group texting and, that sort of behavior. And I know they're only elementary school kids, but I think, 4th, 5th graders are starting to have phones and bring them to school and causing some havoc that way.
Disruptions for sure.
Now, would that fall as a level 2 infraction, which is the misuse of electronic telecommunications?
Yeah, but I think the misuse, what does that mean, misuse? Does it mean videotaping a fight or does it mean videotaping the school play?
Videotaping fights is within the code. It's one of the options underneath the misuse of cell phones.
Right, but you can also get in trouble for videotaping just a regular event at school. So I don't see them as being equal.
Yeah, I don't have the wording. I don't have the code in front of me.
I have the coding here. So it starts with display or use of personal electronic or telecommunication device during school hours. Students may possess cell phones or other personal devices while on school grounds. However, they must be turned off at all times unless utilized for an approved activity. Possession of all personal electronics, including cell phones, is at the student's own risk, and the school assumes no responsibility or otherwise with regard to these items. Display of weapons or inappropriate messages, pictures, or images on one cellular phone or device that cause a disruption to the safe operation of school include displaying the use of a cellular phone or all other telecommunication devices unless for approved activity, but not limited to MP3 players, radios, CD players, headsets, or PSPs during regular school hours. There's unauthorized use of an electronic device or camera to record school-related events or activities on campus. And then a level 3 infraction is unauthorized taping, photographing, or posting on social media of a disruption on campus, fighting conflicts that can be used to degrade, threaten, intimidate, or dehumanize the student involved. And then sexting or display of pornographic material or inappropriate messages is a level 3. And then level 4 is consultation with law enforcement if it gets there.
Oh my.
Right, but I mean, these things happen a lot and nothing, maybe it needs to be where the administrators of the school are more aware of what the code of conduct is and what the consequences should be. But I think there needs to be something where it's more a delineated line between tape recording something at school and the kids are just goofing around and tape recording a fight and dropping it for everybody to see, or harassing, the kids going back and forth online with one another during school hours, let's say. I mean, I'm not sure how much the school can do when they're at home doing that type of stuff, but it just seems like the rules aren't, we've got rules that aren't as quick as what is happening with, you know, the social media and electronics at school, that we got to keep up with that. I mean, that's just in the real world too, but at school, it's with the phones and the tape recording of things and posting them, or just the kids being nasty to one another on their phones. So I just would like to see something where it's taken a little more seriously and there are known consequences that the kids and parents are aware of, and administrators. It's just from my, for the experiences I've had with this, with schools and this happening.
Thank you. I've tried to capture it on the sticky notes just so we have it and the student services team can take that back. If you want me to add or take anything away, just let me know.
Okay, I'm gonna get my head real close so I can read it. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And Elizabeth Carter, and then Dr. Maisie Adams.
I was just gonna say, going back to the 5 levels of model student behavior. I'm a dean at a school, and I think that the reason they put that in there like that was to mirror the 5 levels of non-desirable offenses. And that goes along with the whole PBIS thing too, where you're showing the model and then you're showing the negative. However, I do agree that it could somehow be condensed maybe into just one, it could be condensed so it's not 5 levels. I think you could have that positive and it still be, within just one level of expectation. But I think that's the reason that they did it that way. And then I can answer a little bit of what Julie was just talking about as well. I think the part where it gets tricky for schools with the whole social media thing is if it's happening on campus or off campus. And if it's happening at home with like the mean text messages and the being mean to each other on social media, that makes it much more difficult for the school to prove and to provide discipline for, because that is a gray area in the code of conduct.
Can we possibly ungray that area, if that's a word? Ungray. That sounds almost criminal to allow or to not want to really give consequences with, I know it's on their own time, maybe off campus, but if we're going to use, or if the kids are, or students are going to choose to use media outlets or cell phones and that kind of thing to harass and bully each other, that's no bueno. I mean, they're still, stakeholders of that school. They're still, products of our school system, that kind of thing. So I think they need to be accountable all the way through. I don't think there's a good time or bad time that they can choose to do that. It's not all right. It leads to devastating consequences in the end. And we know that with our recent mental health training that that most of us have gone through, So if you're a student, if they're a student, they need to know that if they're going to use media sources or cell phones, use it appropriately or don't use it. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah. Scary stuff,
Dr.
It's just very difficult for schools to prove those things when we don't have access to all of their social medias and we don't know it's just a very difficult thing for schools to be able to prove that someone did something. And when it's not happening at school, now a lot of times it does come into school and then we definitely address it with discipline, and that falls under our code of conduct. But if it's happening completely outside of school, a lot of times it's more of conversations with parents to make them aware, but it does limit our ability to provide discipline.
I guess I'm a parent. My parenting days are about gone because my kiddos are in college now, but I think from a parent now today, I think I'd find a way to figure out where it's coming from and get down to the source of it pretty darn quick. You know, if there are peers within the schools that are, you know, engaging in this type of activity, and if it's affecting my child, then I would want to maybe speak for other parents if it's affecting their child. We're going to find out, we're going to get an answer, and we're going to have it stop, or we're going to press charges, you know, that kind of thing. Because it's not excusable. There's got to be a way to track that and get to the source of it.
Thank you. We are almost ready to go back, but I didn't want to miss Dr. Maisie Adams. She's had her hand up as well.
Yeah, I guess my question is like, do we have to have these recommendations submitted tonight, or can we continue to work on this? Because I would love to see some like best practices on what some like other school districts are doing, and what has worked, like maybe some research that shows something that has been effective in another district. So we're not just like going blindly in a direction, but we have some research to back up what we're suggesting. Yeah.
All right. If there's, is there anything else that you all would like to add before we go back?
Yeah, and I just added the sticky note to question 2 about being eliminated. Is one thing I just noticed is not that drugs and alcohol should be used, but the drugs and alcohol prevention section of the code of conduct. I get what what we're going for, but it's really just stuff that really I think could be other places. It doesn't have to be in the code of conduct because it's just talking.
Woohoo, we've got it.
Yay. Okay, we got it. Yeah, so Christine couldn't open two Zooms at the same time. So we were able to connect, and we're good to go. So I'm just gonna take off the ones that we don't need. Okay. Maybe keep if it helps. Yes, the host cannot have 2 things going on at one time. All right. So you guys are doing a great job already starting to put your sticky notes up there. That's awesome. Look at all these. Okay. Dress code we have to keep. That's a suggestion. Yes, and actually within state statute, it is a requirement. So that's a good thing. All right. So you don't have to worry about that. Restorative practices. A couple of you have put that. Can you?
I'm not seeing the Jamboard. Is everybody else? It's just me?
I'll send you the link, Linda.
Okay. Thank you.
Would anybody like to share the why behind the restorative practices you feel it needs to stay?
Yeah, I'll share.
Yeah.
Reason restorative practices need to stay is that it helps with disciplinary problems between students. And then also if a student has a problem with a teacher, that they'll get together in a neutral area and they'll talk to each other and they'll talk out what the problem is and talk about how and what the problem was and how they can actually go about resolving that problem. At the school I work at, which is Pace and Collier, that's what we're based on. We're based on restorative practices. And I see it work every day. So I think that's one thing that we need to keep and make sure that's implemented in all the schools because it works.
Okay. Thank you for that perspective. I really appreciate that. Anybody else want to share in regards to that piece? All right. Discipline quick reference guide. Is that the 2-page paper where it has the levels and the dots and the check mark? And if you and you talk to law enforcement, is that what you're referring to? is it this section? I just want to make sure that I capture it correctly. Paul, do you see anything, or Amanda, do you guys see anything on here so far in the first slide that we should keep that we might need more information about?
I just saw the post about gifted and talented language, and I was wondering if the person who had added that had any clarification as to specifically what gifted and talented language.
So it might be, it might be people that are not joining.
I know we lost a couple folks in the
Yeah, in the
shuffle here.
transition. Yeah. All right. Welcome, Jen. Sorry. Oh, I don't know. Welcome, Jen.
Tammy, in the midst of the shuffle, my camera's gone. I don't know where it went.
I know, crazy, right?
I had a camera earlier, I promise.
You did. I know. I saw you.
And I have a camera in the Google Meet.
So for those of you, John and Jen, we're just now, we're just still looking at the first slide in regards to what are the must-haves that need to be kept in the code. So if anybody has any other ideas or suggestions.
So I'm having a hard time. I'm sorry, this is Jen. I'm having a hard time finding the slides.
I will put it in the chat box.
Okay.
Did it work when I put that in the chat box earlier?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. I'll put
Yes,
that.
it does. And then, but you have to maneuver between the two. For the visual of the faces and who's talking, and then the Jamboard. You have to split your screen.
So Jen, I just put in the chat box a link.
Okay.
Hopefully you're able to get in.
So I was in before and this is what I saw, but all I see is the sticky notes. I'm not sure I know where I'm supposed to go for the slides.
That's exactly where you're supposed to be. There's nothing
Okay.
else. You're good. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the top of the slide, it has the question, Jen. So that kind of guides each slide.
I see. Okay.
So Mr. Tyler shared with us earlier in regards to the importance of keeping restorative practices. And he discussed how the restorative practices components allow him as a teacher to work with students to restore the harm and to be more individualized with students. So he's had a positive interaction or experience with that.
And I also think they should keep the MTSS on there also. Just so that parents understand what it is. A lot of parents, you go to them, you try to talk to them about MTSS, especially either behavioral or educational, they're completely lost and not sure what you're talking about. So either keep it in there or maybe move it to like a QR code, like the board was talking about, doing something like that. Have the MTSS, but have a QR code where you can scan it. So it doesn't take up so much room, but they need to understand what the MTSS and what the MTSS process is, whether it's disciplinary or whether it's educational.
Okay. Thank you for that feedback. All right. So I'm thinking maybe we could move to the second slide for the second question. And it's what components or sections can be eliminated. So when we're thinking about the different pieces, what do you think could be eliminated? I've received feedback of maybe not the in the very back, it says it's the essential. He's with me. Yep. It's the essential section, and like bicycle helmets and safety maybe could be something that was not needed. But we could look through there and see if there were components.
Hey, Tammy, I could be wrong, but I think someone else added a sticky note and it went right behind the first one that we're seeing. If you're able to move those around a little bit.
Oh, okay, from the first slide to the second slide.
No, I thought I saw one pop up behind there, but I could be wrong.
Okay, yep. And I'll make sure I go through these and they're not layered. Paul, are you able to hop on high school by chance?
Sure, not a problem. Bye, everyone.
Hi, Paul.
Miss you, Paul. All right. So we'll move to the third question. What format would be valuable to stakeholders to access the code? So one of the things that is required in state statute is whatever code that we develop, we also have to have printed copies. So that is one thing that we would have to consider, reducing it. So if we did a lot of links or put things in a different type of portal, we would still create a book with all of those components to it. So nothing would be left out, but we are required by statute to print a book for parents. So both options, the print and the digital. TOC linked. I am not sure what TOC means. There's a sticky note on slide 3 that says TOC linked, and I'm not sure what TOC means.
I'm Googling it.
Okay. Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, I think both print and digital should be fine. I like the one where it says with links in it for some of the stuff we want to try to cut down on the amount of paper that's being used. Because there are some parents, especially parents that are Creole and Hispanic speaking families, that are going to need the fully printed ones. Maybe they don't have the technology where they're at, depending on where they're at in the county. Not everybody has internet still. May have cell phones, but who knows what maybe a cell phone that has a limited data plan. So I think that having it both print and digital, still keeping it that way, and allowing the parents the ability to have that access to a printed copy, or sending a printed copy home, whether it be in Creole, Spanish, or English. Some of the families too are low income that are limited on what they can access.
So let me ask you. Go ahead. Yes,
Forrest. One of the things, Tammy, that and thank you, Mr. Tyler, for that, for speaking about, handheld devices. Because school code of conduct is not only for parent and guardians, it's also for our scholars. So, majority of people, even our scholars, they have cell phones. So keeping it as easily accessible, handheld, because it's important that they know what's in the code of conduct. So even in meetings, even in impromptu conversations, it'll be advantageous if it was definitely some sort of platform that can be utilized on a cell phone, or accessible on a cell phone, even for myself.
Maybe even like an app. I'm not saying an app, but built into almost like an app. When they download the Lee County app on their cell phone.
Right. But there,
and then have the page, hold on, the page linked. So if they go into the code of conduct, have the table of contents linked where they could click on the title and the table of contents, and it takes them right to that page.
exactly. But
Yeah.
again, I'm going to reemphasize for scholar accessibility as well, because it's definitely important for our secondary scholars, for them to access it quickly.
Even if we can, oh, sorry, I can't see the cell phone, but even if we can for the focus link, for the focus app, because it's got links attached to the focus app, put a link on there, put something on there where the student can click on, or even the parent can click on for the focus app, click on it, and it takes them straight to it.
So, Mr. Walker, I'd like to have a follow-up question. Is there opportunity where you have your scholars, they are interacting with the code of conduct?
No, just in case if I'm having a conversation, because I always like to, when I'm speaking to parents and there's a situation, there's an infraction being discussed, I go directly to the code of conduct. So if we're in the hallways, if we're out somewhere, I don't have to go get it. It's right there accessible in their technology device, whether it's on the computer or on their cell phone. So, because I don't like to say anything outside of the code of conduct. I like to be very detailed and specific to what it states.
Okay. So then and if we have I'm not sure if we have parents in our Zoom right now. My question would be, if we did link things, like let's say the MTSS section, it is a large section, I admit that. If we linked that in a platform, we've been cautioned that if we link too much, that there might be the idea that we could, parents would not know everything that was in the code of conduct, or that it may not be as transparent as a whole booklet per se. What are your thoughts about that? Because we want to make sure that we're not, that everything is very transparent, that everybody has access, our parents have access to the information that we share with our students and all of that. Is there any concern that if we were to go to a platform like described where it's linked, that that would eliminate transparency?
My question, my answer to that would be, can we have a hard copy that has all the information in it, accessible and available to parents, sent to them at the beginning of the year, and then also have a digital format where some of the larger aspects are reduced
Okay,
to links?
right. Okay, I understand that. Absolutely.
Where if I'm pulling up the PDF, I'm not having to scroll through 100 pages. There's a page there. Here's QR codes, here's links, where if you want to learn more about X, Y, and Z, that you can take your cell phone, you can scan it, or you can click on the link for that.
Okay. All right. So our question number 4 talks about, should the code be reduced to 1 book rather than 2? And just for your information, in our code of conducts are the exact same for elementary and secondary, except the pictures for elementary are geared more towards elementary, but they're the exact same structure and all of those pieces. The only components that are in a secondary code is reference to Success Academy and the Prevention Center, reference to teen dating violence, and reference to driver's license. Outside of that, everything else is the same. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. It's really not, it is 2 books, but all the same information. Oh yeah, with links for the differences. Yep. I could see that. All right. And then our last question, because we have about 10 more minutes, and is what are the other pieces of the code? We always want an open opportunity, like good of the order type of question. What are the other pieces, if any, of the code that you feel need to be addressed? There is a sticky on there. It says update dress code, allow hoodies, t-shirts, flip-flops, etc. So long as no profanity or holes. Focus should be kids' comfort so they can learn and nothing else. So that is one piece of information. And then electronic telecommunication device should be removed from a level 3. It's covered in level 2. Okay. Is there anything else that you feel should be addressed? You guys are quiet tonight. Last year, we talked for on the code of conduct last year. So with anytime we do a revision, the Florida Department of Education in January came up, or December, excuse me, they had some revisions made to the definitions of the assessor incident reporting. And those are incidences related to more of the criminal activity. So we absolutely have to update the definitions. We have to make sure that we're in compliance with the DOE. Even though they changed it in December, our schools, we went through a training with them and our schools utilized the most recent update already. So we always go back to whatever the DOE has up to date. So that's one thing that will definitely be ratified. Okay. Are there any other burning questions or comments? All right, I kind of, Mrs. Mayor, are you okay if we try to just enter back into the whole group?
I think that's good. I don't know if we have that link right here for everybody to click back on. It made me click off and join this one. I don't know if it made anybody else, but it made me close the Zoom for whatever reason. Did anybody else have that or just me?
I did too, Linda.
Okay, so I can't just click in. I'm going to have to go completely out. But I that's the reason I thought I might need to go ahead and start that.
So I did in the chat box, at least you can copy the link.
Correct. I'll just click on that.
Yeah.
All right.
Real quick before we leave, I did want to make sure we emphasize, because I'm not sure if all students understand the gravity of the schools being able to doing the search and seizure. I just want them to understand that it's just not Lee County, it's actual federal law that allows that to happen. So I know students go over it in history classes sometimes, but I just want all people to know that the school's just not doing it because they want to do it. They're doing it because there's reason behind it, and there's actually legal precedence for it. So if we can make sure we address that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler.
Yes, ma'am.
And is there, before we go, is there anybody that would like to speak on behalf of the middle school group when we go to whole group? Do we have a spokesperson?
He's not on tonight. He might have dropped off due to whatever.
Okay.
So if somebody else would like to share with what we went over tonight? Mr. Tyler, I think you're a backup. How about you?
That's fine.
Thank you,
do it.
Mr. Tyler.
Yes, ma'am.
All
All
right.
right, we'll see you guys on the other side.
Thank you all.
All right, let me text and see what they want to do. Go ahead and start talking, and I promise you, I'll let you know when they tell me that it's time for us to cut off and go back, but
Because we haven't looked, I would like to take a look at the Jamboards too before.
Yeah, I
whoever's
mean, go
reporting
ahead.
Back goes and reports out.
go ahead and do that,
Um,
Jess.
so we
And then
ended on
I'll try and
bullying.
let you guys know quickly if they're gonna cut us off.
Okay, so the last comment ended on bullying, so while I don't believe that, I've also made a note of that because we work closely with our legal team, so we'll ask those questions. So I don't see it noted in statute, but if it's maybe noted in another statute, like the bullying statute, they can piece all that together. So I've made a note of that to say, hey, is that something we need that much of?
Okay.
So Jessica, I'm gonna make you a co-host if you want to show the Jamboard.
Which there's two of us.
You're Jessica Duncan. I'm gonna let you show the Jamboard.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot we have two Jessicas, but
Put the Jamboard in the chat box.
Wally's going to add the Jamboard to the chat box for us, so I can just share and pull that up.
Yeah, and a lot of what we have said has been put on the Jamboard. I've been trying to put things that people have said to some extent on there. And then there are a couple questions that we haven't talked about yet, but oh, they're blank pages. Okay.
So in your chat box, I mean, if you just want to go and you can click right on the link yourself, and then I won't have to share or take any chances with our tech tonight. You can click right in the link and those will come up, and I'll just keep talking through as so you see on the first one, it's what are the must-haves? And then the first one we have one, and we have a couple more. Jessica, are you looking at those two?
Yeah,
Do you want to jump in and just go through those?
For the must-haves?
Sure.
So we've got student and parent family expectations, which I mentioned before. We talked about things we need to have consequences for the behaviors in there, and including attendance. And I see attendance on there, and I also see it on the last slide as well, which is other things to be addressed. And then information about school violence and the consequences. Some of the other things.
Jessica.
Yes.
Our chair, sorry.
Yes, sorry.
You are you got a co-host, so if you want to pull it up and display it, you can. If you want to pull the
Okay.
yeah, you can go ahead and show it. Make it easier for you to talk about it, because I know it's not easy. Sometimes Zoom is not fun to play with.
Yeah, but now I have to remember how to do it. I haven't.
If you go to
if you go right to the bottom
there you go. Perfect. There you go. Awesome. I'm impressed. You're muted.
Sorry, I fixed one thing, I messed up the other. So some of the things that we've talked about, I either put on there or other people had already put on there. I know that one of the things was already mentioned that it's required, which is dress code. So I know I didn't put that on there, but I know that was another concern that I've heard from a lot of parents, is dress code, how it's enforced or how it's not enforced, and what exactly needs to be done about it. Was a concern, but I think it sounds like it's just got to be in there kind of as is. So
Hey, everybody, let me break in. They're back on the main screen, so.
Okay.
We're back on the main link, so I'm gonna disconnect from everybody, and if you go back to the main link, then we'll go in there, and I promise you next time, we'll try and get this a little more, organized, because it's been a little, I've lost more hair tonight, Scott and I have lost more hair tonight, and we're already bald, so.
Well, I
All
guess
right.
before we force everybody back, I mean, does anyone else have a comment they want to make, or they haven't had an opportunity to make? I want to be sure everybody gets the opportunity to get their voice heard, because that's a little short, and I don't know if Ms. Duncan had any other questions for the high school group. That sounds like she had a couple questions too, so.
I didn't, but I do
Don't
want
rush
to
us
just
back.
on the dress code piece, even though it's required to have a dress code piece, I think we still should put a sticky about consistency and enforcement. And even when we don't change those things, we share this information with various groups, including our administrators. So important sticky. Thank you.
Got it.
Great, thank you.
All right, everyone, I'm gonna end it for everyone, and if you'll go back to the main link, and we'll join the main group.
Sounds good.
So it looks like we've had some technical difficulties tonight with our breakout rooms. It's 7:19. I guess let me just ask the chairs of starting with elementary. Were y'all still in the middle of discussions, or had you wrapped up, or do you need some more time to add additional thoughts or comments that you have on the code of conduct?
I think we were just close to wrapping up. Dr. Johnson, I think that we were at that point, and we got cut off in the middle of a comment, but it was taken care of. So Dr. Johnson, unless you have anything different, or Michelle, if you have anything different.
No, I think I captured part of what you were saying and anyway, and kind of you wrapped it up when we got over here. So it's there.
I mean, and I'll comment, all the Jamboard links are independent, so they're still working. So if you have other thoughts from your group that you didn't put up, I mean, feel free that you can still do that. What about, I mean, I'll say, I can ask high school. I was in there. I mean, high school was still kind of going and adding stuff. And so we said, we weren't ready to come back. I don't know if middle school, where were you guys at?
We were pretty much done. We were done.
Okay. All right. I guess the high school folks, if they want, while we're in the general session here, could still add stuff to the Jamboard, or I don't know if I'll volunteer Miss Jessica Duncan and Miss Tammy Scott. They look eager to spend a few minutes in the general session taking any questions. If anybody has any questions or comments or thoughts or ideas that you didn't get to express in your breakout group, let's provide an opportunity to do that for a few minutes, since we certainly have some time and want to be sure everybody gets a chance to give meaningful feedback.
Yes, and Scott, I just want to add to you, I still have the Jamboards from last year, and actually have looked at them multiple times within the last couple of weeks, because just reflecting back on all the comments that you had for our group last year and preparing for our conversation tonight. So please feel free to add to the Jamboards. That's very, very beneficial. I'm not sure that you really do understand how I can impart that it really is very helpful for us.
So I'll certainly say at the bottom of your screen, there's a little smiley face with a plus that says reactions. And if you click that, there's a button that says raise hand. You can certainly, if anybody has any questions they just want to ask, if you're not the type of person that wants to type their stuff out, you could raise your hand now. And one of our wonderful presenters there would be happy to call on you and hear your question or respond to you and get some dialogue going while we still have some time to give feedback, if anybody has feedback. There we go. Go ahead, Yvonne.
I guess I should unmute. That'd be good. Okay. And I had an aha. In our session, we finished it up with a big thing that kind of struck my heart was misuse of technology and social platforms off a school campus and how it might be damaging to our youth just mentally, you know, and their social mental health. So, and then piggyback that together with, as you opened up, Mr. Hertz, you had said, what about, I think it was you, are we looking at door to door that for this dress code to cover door to door, like, or just on schools? So if it's door to door, then would we want to maybe really crack down or find a way to really make sure that technology is being used appropriately, or how to consequence it off of school hours? Is that part of the door to door or just on the school time? Do you know where I'm trying to go with this? If that's even possible.
I'd certainly defer to either Miss Duncan or Miss Scott to respond to you there.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
So I'm not sure if this is something you discussed more at length in one of the breakouts. So social media is a challenge. Students use their own social media at times. They use it at home. So there's a lot of things we have to look at. Are they using a school computer? We have to look at what they're doing with that. What is the impact then to the school? There is a very gray area about what would be considered disciplining or maybe policing a student in time that they're not in school. And not all of that is the responsibility of the school. So there's a lot of different factors that we have to look at when there is a disciplinary infraction that involves social media. And that is, you know, what are they using? When are they doing it? What was the actual infraction? And then what was the impact to the school? And many times, even in our capacity, we get these situations and then we work directly with our legal team to say, you know, where is that line drawn before it's something we wouldn't discipline, or yes, it's had a significant impact to the school and we do have to step in and then provide that consequence.
So with that, is that our current code, which covers only at school, or does some of this change if we expand it to what was, I think, mentioned earlier, from the time they leave their door or get home to their door, something about the door to door? You know, does it change at all or get worse or less?
Again, it really depends on that and the impact of the school, but the door to door thing, I haven't heard. You're basically on school or you know, at a school function, or you're not. You could be using a school issued device. And then we have our electronic usage. But again, there are things that can happen even on your own device in your own home that potentially have such an impact on a school that they do need to be addressed with a consequence.
Okay.
Ms. Duncan, if I might, what we were talking about in the breakout group is door to door. That I know some districts' code of conduct includes like a student riding the bus or walking home, they're subject to the code of conduct until they get to their front door and go home. So if they would get off a school bus and get into a fight, are they subject to the code of conduct, or is it not because they're no longer in school? And I think that's what we were kind of looking at with that.
Okay. Yeah. I think I was putting too many ideas together, maybe. Whoosh.
Transportation is, yes, part of the school, considered part of the school day. Even as far as the bus stop per se, if you're waiting for the bus, once you're, you know, dropped off and not with, you know, waiting for school and should be headed home, those start to cross into like a home and not school. But the bus, definitely.
If I may, it appears that part of the question has to do with jurisdiction. So that we can provide clarity, I believe this is a question we should take back to our legal department, get a definitive response so that the information we provide you is as accurate as possible. So if the group would indulge me, that would be my preference as it relates specifically to that question.
I would certainly appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, do any of our other members have any comments or thoughts they'd like to add about the code of conduct? All right, we can, I guess, do our breakout group reports then, starting with elementary.
Hi there. Okay, I was just tightening up my notes here. Unless Ken, you wanted to do it? All right, so the must-haves that elementary definitely wants to keep or is the dress code, the discipline steps. What is the discipline for dress code? Let's see. I think we're looking for more clear guidelines on what the disciplines would be on bullying and what the procedures would be if bullying was an issue on campus. We want to keep student behavior and student expectations. We were talking in regards to field trips, but it is in there as off-campus and on-campus expectations. So keep that, please. Keep the linked table of contents. Everybody has use for that because nobody wants to flip through, even if it's not 104 pages, and even if we can get it down to 75 pages, I don't know what kind of goal they're looking at. It's still helpful. And this is what we just addressed right now is where does this policy start and end as far as door to door from your house to the bus to the school, certain events. And as Dr. Cupid McCoy just mentioned, this is going to be an area of legal jurisdiction. So she's going to get back to that, get back to us on that. Let's see, there are too many examples of model student behaviors. I mean, the lists are like this, and you can go on and on forever with model student behaviors. You can go on forever with all different kinds of unsupported behavior, but at some point you just have to stop. So all of these lists can be condensed and make those pages much shorter. Too many examples on the same note of what teachers can do to support tiered behavior. So I think what we're all kind of saying is that, you know, we've got lists of 25, 30 items long. If you look closer at the list, we might be able to condense them into 5 to 10 of the same type of behavior. I have something highlighted because I'm actually not sure if I captured this correctly. And we were talking about interventions and corrective actions could be eliminated, but I feel like that note might not be correct. So I'll just like pause for a second if somebody wants to jump in, or else I'm going to delete this because I'm not sure I captured this correctly. Okay, deleting that. One book, 2 sections, a few people asked for. Helpful if you've got multiple grades in one household, just to keep it in one book. I might still be old enough I like paper, I like books. I don't necessarily want to look at everything on my phone. I'm on my computer all day. I'm on digital all day. Sometimes I just want to be on paper. And if I just want to refer to something, boom, it's right there. Let's see. We still want to address cell phone usage, social media, group text harassment, find a way, or at least find a way to get it in the book without having to get too deeply into the myriad of mental health, legal, and all sorts of issues that come with the use of basically social media. So how do we whittle that down to something that reflects model student behavior without going, because this is a topic that can take up all 104 pages these days. What does misuse of technology mean? We're looking for a little bit more clarity there. Is this simply recording events? What types of events? What's allowed, what's not allowed? More on harassing and bullying. How are students going to be held accountable? How can it be disciplined? Can schools get more involved? Is it possible? But that goes back to, well, where does the policy start and stop? Does it start only on school grounds, on the bus on school grounds, door to door? So I think we're looking for more clarity as a whole, but in these specific areas. where does the policy start and where does it end physically? Do we have more time to work on this? I know you want, the book wants to get out by May. Is this the only meeting we have to discuss this? I know I think of things weeks later. I know we've had time on this, but I still feel like I have things to wrap my head around. But is there more time? And another question was asked, and I apologize, I didn't capture who asked it. Can we get, if there is time, what the best practices are in other school districts? Are there any more research-based solutions before we just kind of do a hack job on this book? You know, what have other school districts successfully applied in their codes of conduct that we could possibly look at? And then the last point, I got caught off, but I think we kind of got the gist that, you know, drug and alcohol didn't necessarily need to be a part of the book, because, you know, like some other things there, it could be found in a lot of other places on campus and other practices. So it was just thrown out there. Does that need to be, it needs to be as big a part of the book? And I think that's about where I'm standing. Does anybody want to add anything from elementary that I might have missed?
I think you got everything, Michelle.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
But before we move on to the next group, Ms. Duncan or Ms. Scott, is there a method at which members of DAC or other folks could reach you to provide additional feedback on the code of conduct if they had some?
Absolutely. We'll put our contact information in the chat. And we frequently have people after these meetings reach out with a question or comment or something they thought about later. So we'll do that and be happy to take any additional input or suggestions.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to middle school.
All right, Mr. Tyler. For the middle school, we discussed things we want to keep inside the book. Definitely the dress code is required. Gifted and talented language. The MTSS. Keeping the multi-tier supportive system in there, and then keeping the glossary. And then also restorative practices were also named to be able to be kept inside the code of conduct. And then also looks like scholarships and financial opportunities. Just so high school students know, high school and middle schoolers going into high school know what to look forward to. We only came up with one section that we decided that needed to come off, section about off-campus felony acts. Most likely those will be handled in a case-by-case scenario by the school or by the law enforcement. And then for slide 3, what format would be variable? We're saying print and digital, or print with digital and digital with links or QR codes. And then a focus app link also. Like if parents are in a focus, especially on their cell phones, and they can go to the link section of the focus app. If there was like a link inside there, where then just click and it'll take them to the code of conduct book. That would be very helpful, especially for the people who are digital savvy or have to live on their cell phones because they're so busy in their lifestyle. Maybe they have questions about it. Pull up your focus app, go down, go to the links. It looks like a chain. Click on it and okay, there's code of conduct. Click on it and be able to read whatever's going on with your child at school. Or if there's something going on, you want to know how to take care of it. We're kind of mixed on does there need to be two books. We have some that said yes, and some said no. One said one book, and then if we can have one book, but with links for the differences between the elementary school and the high school, middle school. Many high school, middle school being the driving and a few other aspects that are different between both books. Anyone else from the middle school notice anything that I missed? If not, I will hand it back over to Mr. Hertz.
All right, well, thank you there, Mr. Tyler. That'll bring us to high school for their report out.
Nell, are you gonna do this or do you want me to?
Oh, I certainly can. We started off, got my notes here. We had a very, I would say, vibrant discussion on attendance and consequences to attendance versus tardy. The different tiers that encompass 10%, 20% or more of tardiness, the intervention that goes along with it. We're happy to include Paul Milford into our discussion of that. We're wondering if there was any consistency based on throughout the district, or if that was going to be just well, see, I'm jumping ahead, or if that was going to continue to be school by school. We didn't get a chance to really look into our jam boards, but we certainly did have a lot of discussion into that. We did, I would say probably the most of our discussion had to do with absences, consequences to that, but in our jam boards, we did discuss the expectations of student and families, consequences for behavior, again with tardiness, possibility of consequences, information about the school, violence and consequences to that. We want to emphasize with our dress code, the consistency and enforcement within that. What we would like to eliminate, the alcohol, tobacco tips for students. The MTSS seemed to be more focused on the teachers than it did to the students. So we thought that perhaps there was a better place for that to be set. We didn't feel the need to look at bike or helmet safety. That might not be the appropriate spot for this. We could include a link for scholarships, a little bit more information on bullying, if that can be moved into more of the discipline, just more or less for the need to condense the number of pages. We have, as Scott had said, 108 pages for the middle school, high school. So can that be condensed into one spot? Could teen dating be moved into discipline? So again, condensing that area. What would be most valuable for the stakeholders? Direct links again for the website, going back to the QR codes into Focus Portal as well. Move back again, the MTSS, could that be focused more towards, that seems to be more of a teacher concern than it is a parent student, but we could have a link to it for those parents who would like to look into it. Again, more QR codes linking it just for the electronic, obviously for the electronic, to make sure that it's easy enough to read on your cell phone, since for some of us, that's the option that we use. Can it be reduced to one book or two? We think that 2 books is better suited. There's not many differences, so perhaps we could find the differences between. For the other areas we would like to address, again, we went back to attendance. For us, that was a big concern for the high school students. Someone had noted that there's a lot of kids that will come walking with Dunkin' Donuts, a lot of kids that just say they don't feel like coming in. They have a little bit more freedom, a little more flexibility than perhaps the elementary and middle school kids do. So that was an important part for high school. And does there need to be an addendum to the listing of gender identity? Some other topics, do we think about new, as some of the other topics just thinking about the newer laws. And then since the district encompasses 3 technical colleges and serves high school students over the age of 18, should we also consider an adult version of the student code of conduct? So as I said before, that was in our jam boards. A lot of what we talked about was attendance and discipline. As I noted, that this is something that the high school students have a lot more freedom, perhaps, than the elementary and middle schools do. Jess, anything else?
Nope, you did a fantastic job.
So you guys have given us a lot of information as we get together from our groups. I've had the pleasure this year, as in the last 2 years, of working with the high school group. And I could just say, for that, speaking for that group, amazing input and suggestions, and very specific, which is so helpful to us in our work. I am sure I'll hear much of the same from middle and elementary when we get together. Tammy and my information is in the chat box. So again, if you have anything additional you want to share, something that comes to you at a later date, please don't hesitate to reach out. We appreciate any information that you have. So just from our student services side, just want to say thank you for your really valuable input.
It was a pleasure having you come to our meeting, and it's great to hear that you're still looking at the feedback from last year, and I acknowledge your challenge. I'll share it was interesting. The high school group talked about taking the MTSS out of the code and thought that might be better in an internal document, and the elementary group thinks it should be kept in. So maybe it's great that you have 2 books and different audiences, but I can see that there'll be some challenges for you as different folks certainly look at the same things differently. Well, that takes us to the opportunity for public comment from any non-DAC members that we have that would like to share something with DAC about our agenda, or perhaps a future agenda item you'd like to see DAC address. Seeing none, does anyone any members of DAC have anything for the good of the order?
May we share with our colleagues the contact information that you've provided for Jessica and Tammy, your emails, your phone numbers, if in a SAC meeting, if a staff member wants to, contribute to what they think could be changed or eliminated, and they'd like to have their voice heard, may they reach out and contact you directly?
Certainly, or if they're not comfortable doing that, because we probably have more contact with you, you can do that for them, or they can reach out directly. Either way, it's fine.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Anybody else with anything for the good of the order? I would happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Dr. Adams.
Second that.
Okay, Mr. Tyler with the second there. And anyone opposed to adjourning at this time? Seeing none, I will remind everyone that our next meeting for the full DAC is March 29th of 2023. And you will be getting emails from Ms. Rude about that. And hopefully next time also we'll be able to include the presentation for you ahead of time. This one was a little short notice on stuff. So we put this together so they could get everything in our comments to get to the board, but we'll make sure we continue our practice of getting the presentations out along with the agendas to everyone. I look forward to seeing everybody March 29th. Have a great night. We are adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.